International Superstar Soccer 2 saw a release on the PlayStation 2, the Nintendo GameCube and the Xbox in 2002, and is the sequel to the original ISS game on the PS2 that was released during the early days of the console's lifespan. And the game pretty much is a drastic overhaul of the original, where it gradually moves away from the more arcade aesthetic and feel of the original game in favour of a more simulation focused experience. As the game generally is, for the most part, from playing it, if you played the first game, it does have nice graphics and visual features, but the gameplay itself in terms of the controls, while they're dynamic, it is a bit harder to pick up and play compared to that of the original. Again, they were always trying to improve on various aesthetics and features with each iteration of the game, with the series later ending with the third entry in the series so that Konami could solely focus on the Pro Evolution Soccer series from there on out. And the game did receive above average reviews from magazines, but mainly the one major issue of the game was due to the computer AI being somewhat kind of cumbersome and even a bit overly aggressive at times, to a point that it's very hard to run away from a player or try to use the tricks to work your way around or to dribble the ball around the player, because when you start to go into a long sprint, the player nearly stands alongside you the whole time, so you can't outrun the player, or it's very hard to cross the ball in because they nearly block everything. So it makes it virtually impossible at times for, say, a beginner to really get to grips with the game, as the AI can make the experience very frustrating for the average gamer. The one thing to note as well is with the features, they also try different experiments with different types of gameplay dynamics, and one of the elements that fails miserably in this game, in my own opinion, is the corner system. When you put the ball out for a corner, it uses kind of like a line system where you have to make sure that you hit the bar at a certain point, kind of like what you would get if you were playing likes of golf games, where you'd have a power bar and you have to hit it within a certain point, but it's so poorly designed and so finicky that you can't really take a basic or even a good corner with this. It's just trial and error, and it's just pure luck to see if you do get it. For the amount of times I played the game, and for the few games I did play with recording this video, I think I only managed to execute 2 perfect corners where the player was able to get the ball up in the air. Everything after that was just mediocre, or he'd hit it out over the touchline, or he just wouldn't even hit the ball off the ground. It's so poorly designed. Like, people just want simplicity with their games, in all fairness. I know this is an older title and I can understand that they were trying to experiment with ideas, but ideally when it comes to likes of corners and that, you don't want overly complicated systems, and you don't most certainly do not want to be relying on pure luck in order to just hit the ball off the ground. You want to be able to know just by hitting the button, and even at how long you press the button for, that you have a bar that goes up to tell you how much power you have on the shot, instead of relying on a bar to go across the screen, or you have to hit it at a certain point just to have a chance of executing a perfect cross. It's not really a good way to play soccer games, because again, with a lot of these type of elements, it's already hard enough to play the game as it is from a playability standpoint, trying to get used to the features, even with the likes of penalties and so forth. But when you add in these complicated dynamics, it does hamper the experience. So I can understand why it didn't get the best of reviews when you compare it to other ISS titles and even other soccer games in general. But I get it. With these type of games, they were always trying to improve, but the way to improve was always to try different type of gameplay mechanics. And at the time, they probably thought that it was worth putting it in, and they thought that it was worthwhile using, but truthfully it wasn't. It actually frustrates the player, and it kills the experience to a degree, because it doesn't really even give you any sort of an advantage, because you're just relying on pure luck in order to have a chance of even being able to have a shot on goal, or vice versa. So it's something that does negatively impact the game in some respects. But aside from that, it is a decent experience. It's not the best football game on the system. In my own personal opinion, like, from having played this and the first one, I prefer the first game. The first game was definitely easier to pick up and play in all respects. This game was just a bit more finicky, and you had to work a lot harder to do specific tasks, or even just complete simple tasks. Even on the beginner level, I just found it a bit more frustrating to get to to grips with compared to the first game. But it's like any other type of game out there. They're never going to be perfect. They are what they are. And considering it's an old game that's pushing 20 years now, that's exactly what you're going to get. It really just depends on your own preference and your own play style and what you really think of the game overall. It's not to say that it's a bad game. It's actually not a bad soccer game at all. It just has some features in it that could have been a lot better, and that's what lets it down to some degree. But if you are looking for better alternatives, you would be better to go and play either the FIFA series or even the later Pro Evolution series, as they will definitely give you a lot more bang for your buck, and you will have a lot more control over various systems instead of relying on just pure luck, if I'll be honest. But that's just the nature of a lot of these games, because there's so many games, especially soccer games, that were released on the PlayStation, especially the PS2. There's a plethora of them, plus there's, with the amount of them that is there, a lot of them are just rebrands or just rehashes of the same game, and they might have maybe tweaked a few things or just changed the brand name and resold it. But that's just the way games were back then. But ideally, if you have one soccer game, technically you just need the one. You don't really need to keep buying the latest iteration, because chances are the game that you currently have is better than what's going to come after it in most regards, because they will end up adding in new features that probably don't suit your play style anyway, so you may be best just to avoid it. And this game would be proof of that. Now, for those that can spend time with it and they have played it, I'm sure that you've been able to have somewhat of a good experience and you have been able to somewhat master it to some degree. But for those that play casually, or for just the casual gamer, it probably isn't the best soccer game to boot up and play. There are easier games to pick up and play on the system. But I would love to know your thoughts on International Superstar Soccer Pro for the PS2, and what do you think of it back in the day? Did you enjoy it, or did you find it frustrating with a lot of those needless elements that were added in with the likes of the cornering system and so forth? Be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be updated of future videos. And also, if you want to check out more content around similar types of soccer games also released on the PS2, you can check out the playlist here on screen to see more of those games in action. And I will see you all in the next one.